My mom just called. Her chest hurts, her arm's going numb. I need your car, now.
And call an ambulance. I have work dinner tonight. She's your mother. Figure it out yourself.
My wife told me to figure it out while my mother was having a cardiac emergency. So I did. I found a way to save my mother, and she found out the next day exactly what it cost to not show up when it matters. My name is Daniel Carter. I'm 45 years old, living in Portland, Oregon, in a quiet suburban neighborhood where nothing dramatic ever seems to happen until it does. I've always been the kind of man people describe as steady. 6 feet tall, slightly broad-shouldered from years of coaching youth baseball, with short dark hair starting to gray at the temples. Not intimidating, not flashy, just reliable. The kind of man who shows up early, stays late, and doesn't complain. That didn't happen by accident. It came from watching my father work himself into the ground to provide for us, and from watching my mother hold everything together when life got hard. That morning, at exactly 7:42 a.m., my phone buzzed on the kitchen counter. Mom, my mother, Margaret Carter, is 80 years old. A small woman, barely 5'2", with soft silver hair she keeps neatly pinned back, and eyes that somehow still carry both warmth and quiet strength. She's the kind of person who never asks for help, even when she should, especially when she should. After my father passed 12 years ago, she managed everything alone. Finances, the house, even her own health, like asking for help was some kind of failure she refused to accept. I picked up on the second ring. Daniel, I didn't want to bother you. That was the first sign something was wrong. My mom doesn't sound fragile, ever. What's going on? I asked, already standing. It's just, my chest feels tight, and my left arm. She paused, like she was trying to downplay it even as she said it. It feels a little numb. For exactly 1 second, I froze. Then I moved. There's a kind of instinct that overrides everything else when it comes to family. No debate, no hesitation. I'm coming. Right now, I said, already grabbing my keys. But halfway to the door, reality hit. My truck was still at the auto shop. Alternator failure. Not ready until Friday. I stopped. Just for a moment. Just for a think, Daniel. That's when the second weight hit me, the one that had been sitting quietly on my chest for weeks. Work. I've been working as a mid-level operations manager for a logistics company for almost 12 years. Lately, rumors of layoffs have been circling like vultures. Last Friday, my supervisor avoided eye contact with me during a meeting. Yesterday, HR scheduled a departmental review. I know what that means. I'm probably next. But none of that mattered right now, not compared to my mom. I turned toward the staircase, about to call out, then something caught my eye through the front window. Across the street, a woman was unloading boxes from a small SUV. That's when I noticed her for the first time. Emma Brooks, mid-30s, maybe 36, average height, slim build, dark brown hair tied into a loose ponytail. She wore jeans and a faded hoodie, moving with quiet efficiency. No wasted motion, no small talk with neighbors, focused. Beside her stood a young boy, around 8 years old, holding a small cardboard box almost too big for him. He looked up at her constantly, like she was his entire world. Emma didn't smile much, but there was something steady about her. Controlled, like someone who had learned the hard way that life doesn't give second chances easily. A single mom, I guessed, new to the neighborhood, kept to herself. Our eyes met for half a second through the glass. She gave a small nod, polite, distant, then went back to work. And just like that, the moment passed. But something about it stayed with me. I didn't have time to think about it. My mom needed me, and nothing, absolutely nothing, was more important than that. I took the stairs 2 at a time, my heart already racing ahead of me. "Lauren!" I called out, my voice sharper than usual. The sound of running water stopped upstairs. A few seconds later, she appeared at the top of the staircase. Lauren Carter, my wife of 11 years, stood there wrapped in a silk robe, her blonde hair twisted into a towel, her posture straight and composed, like she was about to step into a boardroom instead of a hallway. She was 38, tall and striking, with the kind of polished beauty that turned heads without trying. Lauren had built her life around control of her image, her schedule, her environment. It came from growing up in a family where appearances meant everything, where weakness was quietly punished and success was displayed like a trophy. Over time, that mindset had hardened into something colder. "My mom just called," I said quickly, trying to keep my voice steady. "Her chest hurts, her arm's going numb. I need your car, right now." Lauren didn't react the way I expected. No widened eyes, no sudden urgency. She simply leaned one shoulder against the door frame, arms folding across her chest. "Can't you call an ambulance?" she asked, her tone flat, almost bored. "She hates ambulances, you know that," I replied, taking a step closer. "I just need the car. I'll take her to St. Vincent's and bring it right back." There was a pause. Not the kind where someone is thinking, but the kind where the decision has already been made. Lauren glanced over her shoulder toward the bedroom, where I knew her outfit for the night was already laid out. A designer dress, probably, something chosen days in advance. "Daniel, I can't today," she said finally. "I have a full workday, and tonight's important. It's not just dinner, it's networking. This could open doors for me." I stared at her, trying to process what I was hearing. "My mom might be having a heart attack," I said, slower this time, like saying it differently might change her response. Lauren exhaled softly, like I was being unreasonable. "You're overreacting," she said. "It's probably just anxiety or something minor. She'll be fine." Something inside me tightened. Not snapped, just tightened, like a wire being pulled too far. "Lauren," I said quietly, "I'm not asking for a favor. I'm telling you I need your help." She straightened up, her expression cooling even further. "And I'm telling you I can't rearrange my entire day every time there's a situation," she replied. "You need to learn how to handle things without depending on me." The words landed harder than they should have. "Handle things?" I repeated. She picked up her phone from the dresser just inside the doorway, already disengaging from the conversation. "She's your mother, Daniel," she said without looking at me. "Not mine." Then she added, almost as an afterthought, "Figure it out." And that was it. No anger, no hesitation, no guilt, just a decision. I stood there at the bottom of the stairs, my hand still gripping my phone, my mind trying to catch up with what had just happened. 11 years of marriage, and in the one moment that mattered, I felt completely alone. For the first time, I wasn't confused about Lauren. I understood her, and somehow that made everything worse. I didn't waste another second standing there. My fingers were already dialing before my mind fully caught up. "Henry," I said the moment the line connected, "I need help. My mom's having chest pain, my truck's down. Can you drive me?" Henry Collins, 72, lived 3 houses down. Retired electrician, average height, wiry build, weathered face with permanent lines around his eyes from decades of squinting at wires and sunlight. He wore the same flannel jackets year-round and spoke like a man who didn't believe in wasting words. After losing his wife 5 years ago, he'd grown quieter, but not colder, if anything, more present. The kind of man who showed up because that's just what you did. "I'm pulling out now," he said. No questions, no hesitation. 3 minutes later, I heard his old Ford sedan roll into the driveway. The engine rattled like it had a story to tell, but it was steady like him. I grabbed my jacket and stepped outside, the cold Portland air hitting my face sharp enough to wake me fully. Henry leaned across the passenger seat and pushed the door open. "Get in," he said simply. I slid into the seat, still holding my phone, my chest tight for a different reason now. Not fear, but something heavier. Gratitude. We pulled away from the curb, tires crunching over gravel. "She okay?" he asked, eyes fixed on the road. "Don't know yet," I said. He nodded once. That was enough. No forced reassurance. No empty words. Just presence. And in that silence, I felt something I hadn't felt inside my own house in a long time, support that didn't need explanation. As we passed the corner, I caught a glimpse of movement across the street. Emma Brooks stood near her driveway, one hand resting lightly on a half-open moving box. Up close now, I could see the faint tiredness under her eyes, the kind that comes from long nights and responsibilities you carry alone. Beside her was her son Ryan, about 8 years old, small for his age, with messy brown hair and curious eyes that missed nothing. He tugged at her sleeve, glancing toward my house. "Mom, why didn't his wife help him?" he asked, his voice quiet but clear enough to carry in the still morning air. Emma didn't answer right away. Her eyes followed my car for a second longer than necessary, something unreadable passing across her face. Then she crouched down to Ryan's level, speaking softly, too low for me to hear. But I didn't need to hear it. I understood the question well enough. I turned back to the windshield, my jaw tightening slightly. Henry didn't comment, but I saw his grip on the steering wheel shift subtle, but there. He'd heard it too. We drove in silence for another block before he spoke again. "Funny thing," he said, with voice calm. "You find out who people are real quick when things get hard." He didn't look at me. Didn't need to. I let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. My mind replayed Lauren's face, calm, distant, untouched by urgency. Then I looked at Henry, already here, already driving, no conditions attached. The contrast wasn't subtle anymore. It was undeniable. And for the first time, I stopped making excuses for it. The emergency room at St. Vincent's was brighter than it should have been, the kind of artificial light that made everything feel more serious than you were ready for. A nurse met us at the entrance, efficient and composed, her name tag reading Nurse Alicia Grant, early 40s, tall, dark-skinned, hair pulled into a tight bun, eyes sharp but kind. She moved with practiced speed, asking quick, direct questions while guiding my mother into a wheelchair. There was no panic in her voice, just control, the kind that comes from seeing everything and still choosing calm. I stayed close, one hand on my mom's shoulder, feeling how small she suddenly seemed under the harsh hospital lights. They took her in quickly, faster than I expected. That alone told me enough. I sat in the waiting area for what felt like hours, but was probably less than one. The clock on the wall ticked louder than it should have. My phone sat heavy in my hand. No messages, not from Lauren. Not even a simple, "Is she okay?" The silence from her wasn't surprising anymore. That realization settled into me quietly, like something final. When the doctor finally came out, I stood up immediately. Dr. Stephen Hayes, mid-50s, tall, thin, with silver hair and glasses that sat low on his nose, carried himself with a calm authority. His voice was steady, measured, the kind you trusted even before you understood what he was saying. "Mr. Carter?" he asked. "Yes. Your mother experienced what we call a mild cardiac event," he said. "It's not a full heart attack, but it's serious. Her body is signaling stress on the heart. The good news is, she's stable." Stable. The word hit me like air after being underwater too long. "But we'll need to monitor her closely," he continued. "Run additional tests, adjust her medication. At her age, we don't take chances." I nodded, absorbing every word, even the ones I didn't fully understand. "Can I see her?" "In a few minutes," he said, already turning slightly. "She's asking for you." Of course she was. When I walked into the room, she was lying there, smaller than I'd ever seen her, wrapped in hospital blankets that looked too big for her frame. But her eyes, those hadn't changed. Clear, steady, watching me the second I stepped inside. "You came," she said softly. 2 words. That was it. No drama, no fear, just truth. And somehow, that nearly broke me. I stepped closer, taking her hand gently. "Of course I came," I said, my voice quieter than I expected. "I'll always come." She gave a small nod, like that answer was enough, like it always had been. I sat beside her bed, listening to the soft rhythm of the monitor beside her. For the first time that morning, my breathing slowed, but the weight in my chest didn't disappear. It shifted. My phone buzzed. I glanced down, expecting, maybe hoping it was Lauren. It wasn't. An email notification from HR. Subject, position review update. I didn't need to open it to know what it meant. My stomach tightened anyway. I turned the screen off without reading further. Not now. I couldn't deal with both things at once. A second buzz followed a few minutes later. This time, a text. Unknown number. "Hi, this is Emma. I saw what happened earlier. Is your mom okay?" I stared at the message longer than I should have. Emma. Someone who barely knew me. Checking in. I typed back slowly. "She's stable. Thank you." 3 dots appeared almost instantly. Then, "That's good. Let me know if you need anything." I looked up at my mom, still holding my hand, her breathing calm now. And for the first time that day, something became painfully clear. It wasn't about who was supposed to be there, it was about who actually was. The room felt calmer the next morning, like the storm had passed but left something behind in the air. My mom was sitting up now, her posture small but steady, her silver hair brushed neatly as if she refused to let illness take even that from her. I had stepped out briefly to grab coffee when I returned and saw her holding her phone, glasses low on her nose, her expression focused in a way I hadn't seen since I was a kid watching her balance bills at the kitchen table. "Daniel," she said without looking up, "I'm going to call Mr. Whitaker." Samuel Whitaker, her attorney, had handled my father's estate years ago. Late 60s, tall and lean with a sharp jawline and neatly combed gray hair, the kind of man who dressed like every detail mattered. He wasn't warm, but he was precise, and my mother trusted him completely. "Mom, you don't have to," I started, but she raised a hand gently, stopping me. "I'm not doing this out of anger," she said quietly. "I've had a long life to think about what matters." When he answered, her voice shifted, calm, respectful, but firm. She explained she wanted to review her will. There was no drama in her tone, no bitterness, just clarity. When she ended the call, she looked at me and said something I'll never forget. "I want to reward the people who show up." I didn't respond right away, because I knew exactly what she meant. Later that afternoon, Henry stopped by the hospital. He walked in like he always did, unassuming, carrying a paper bag with coffee and a sandwich he probably thought I forgot to eat. He gave my mom a quick nod, respectful, then handed me the bag. "Figured you might need this," he said. I tried to thank him properly, even reached into my wallet out of instinct, but he stopped me immediately. "Don't," he said, his voice firm but not harsh. "You don't pay people for doing what's right." There was something in the way he said it, simple, unquestionable, that made me put the wallet back without argument. Henry wasn't just helping. He believed in it. That difference mattered. Not long after he left, there was a soft knock on the door. I turned, expecting a nurse, but it was Emma. She stood there hesitantly, holding a small insulated bag in one hand. Up close, she looked a little different than she had outside, less guarded, more human. Her hair was loosely tied back again, but a few strands had fallen out, framing her face. There was tiredness there, yes, but also something else, quiet determination. "I hope it's okay I came," she said, her voice soft but steady. "I made some food. Hospital food's not great." She stepped inside carefully, placing the bag on the side table. Inside were simple things, sandwiches, fruit, something homemade, nothing fancy, but thoughtful, intentional. My mom smiled at her immediately, the kind of smile she reserved for people she trusted without needing time. "You must be Emma," she said. Emma nodded politely, a little unsure, but relaxed when my mom thanked her. I stood there for a moment, watching the two of them exchange a few quiet words, something warm settling into the space that hadn't been there before, no expectations, no obligations, just presence. And in that moment, it became clear. This wasn't about anger. It wasn't about revenge. It was about truth. About who showed up and who didn't. The call came the next morning, just after I stepped out of my mom's hospital room to take a breath I didn't really need. My phone buzzed once, then again, then again. Lauren. I let it ring the first time. By the third, I answered. Her voice hit me before I could say anything, sharp and uneven in a way I had never heard before. "Daniel, what did your mother do?" There was no greeting, no concern, just panic wrapped in control. I leaned against the wall, staring at the muted TV across the waiting area. "She made a decision," I said. That only made it worse. Lauren exhaled hard. "They called me her lawyer's office. I'm not in the will anymore. Not the house, not the accounts, nothing. This has to be a mistake." I closed my eyes for a second. Not because I was overwhelmed, because I wasn't. That was the difference. It's not a mistake," I said quietly. Silence. Then, "You need to fix this, Daniel. Talk to her. This is extreme. She's overreacting." I almost laughed, but there was no humor in it, just clarity. "No," I said. "She's not." My voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. "I'm not angry anymore. I'm done." The words came out calm, final, like they'd been waiting longer than I realized. On the other end, Lauren didn't speak for a moment. When she did, the panic had shifted into something else, fear. Real fear. But it wasn't for me. It never had been. I ended the call before she could say anything else, not out of spite, just because there was nothing left to say. I stood there for a few seconds, letting the silence settle, and realized something I hadn't admitted before. The marriage hadn't ended in that moment. It had ended a long time ago. I had just been the last one to accept it. My phone buzzed again, this time with an email notification. HR. I opened it finally. Position eliminated. Effective immediately. No build-up, no explanation that mattered. Just numbers, restructuring, appreciation for my years of service. 12 years reduced to a paragraph. I stared at the screen, waiting for something, anger, frustration, anything, but nothing came. Just a quiet sense of inevitability. One more thing falling away. Bad news? A voice asked gently. I looked up. Emma was standing a few feet away, holding 2 cups of coffee. She had changed out of her hoodie this time, wearing a simple gray sweater, her hair down around her shoulders. Without the rush of moving boxes or the distance of a first impression, she seemed more grounded. There was a steadiness in her posture, like someone who had already faced enough hardship to not be shaken easily. I didn't mean to overhear, she added, offering me one of the cups. I hesitated, then took it. I lost my job, I said, the words feeling oddly light. She nodded once, like she understood more than she needed to say. I figured, she replied quietly. I used to work in HR. I've seen those emails. There was no pity in her tone, just recognition. We stood there for a moment side by side, not facing each other, just sharing the same space. I know someone, she said after a second. A small operations firm downtown. They're not flashy, but they're stable. I can put in a word for you if you want. I looked at her, surprised not by the offer, but by how natural it felt. Why would you do that? I asked. She shrugged slightly. Because someone should. That answer stayed with me. Back in the room, my mom was resting, her breathing steady, her face peaceful. For the first time in days, everything felt clear. Not easier, not better, just honest. I had lost a marriage, I had lost a job. But somehow, I didn't feel like I had lost everything. I felt like I had finally stopped holding on to the wrong things. I didn't go back to the house on Alder Street that night, or the night after. By the end of the week, I had packed what mattered into the back of my truck clothes, a few boxes, things that actually meant something, and left the rest behind. There was no fight, no dramatic goodbye. Lauren sent a few messages at first, then stopped. And strangely, the silence didn't feel empty. It felt like space. I moved into my mom's place temporarily, a modest single-story home just 10 minutes from the hospital. It wasn't large, but it was warm-filled with years of quiet routines and memories that didn't demand anything from me except presence. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't trying to hold something together that was already broken. I was just living. 2 weeks later, I started my new job. The company Emma had mentioned, Riverside Logistics Group, was smaller than my old firm, but more grounded. No glass offices, no corporate buzzwords, just people doing real work. My supervisor, Mark Delaney, early 50s, broad build with salt and pepper hair and a straightforward demeanor, shook my hand on the first day and said, "We don't care where you came from, just show up and do the work." That was it. No pressure, no politics. It felt honest. And for the first time in months, I wasn't waiting for the floor to drop out beneath me. Emma and I started talking more, not in big, dramatic ways, but in small, consistent ones. A text in the morning, a quick check-in in the evening, conversations about things that didn't feel forced. She wasn't the kind of person who filled silence just to avoid it. She let things be what they were, and somehow, that made everything easier. I learned more about her over time. She had been married once, briefly. It ended when her husband walked away during a difficult financial period, leaving her to rebuild everything alone with Ryan. That experience had shaped her, made her cautious, independent, but also deeply aware of what real support looked like. On weekends, I found myself helping her around the house. Nothing major at first, fixing a loose cabinet door, replacing a broken fence panel. Small things that didn't need to be done immediately but mattered anyway. Emma would stand nearby sometimes, arms crossed, watching with a half smile she didn't always show. "You don't have to do that," she'd say. And I'd shrug. I know. Ryan, her son, started warming up to me faster than I expected. At first, he kept his distance, watching quietly from the porch or the living room window, but kids notice consistency, and I showed up, every time. One afternoon, he handed me a wrench while I was fixing a leaky pipe without saying a word. That was his version of trust. Over time, now it grew. We started talking about baseball, school, the kind of things kids open up about when they feel safe. Evenings became something I looked forward to. Sitting at the kitchen table with my mom, listening to her talk about small things, neighbors, recipes, memories, while the world outside slowed down. Sometimes Emma and Ryan would stop by. Nothing formal, just presence, laughter occasionally, quiet often, but real. I realized something during those weeks. Peace doesn't arrive all at once. It builds, moment by moment, choice by choice. And for the first time in years, I was choosing something different, something better. 1 year later, everything looked different, but more importantly, everything felt different. My mom stood in the front yard that morning, sunlight catching the silver in her hair as she adjusted the collar of her light blue cardigan. Margaret Carter, now 81, had regained her strength in a way that surprised even her doctors. She still moved carefully, but there was confidence in her steps again, the same quiet independence that had defined her my entire life. Recovery hadn't been easy, but she had done what she always did, showed up for herself every single day, and this time, she didn't do it alone. Across the street, laughter echoed from a small baseball field we had transformed from an empty lot into something meaningful. A year ago, it was just an idea, something I mentioned casually one evening over dinner. Now, it was real. A Carter Youth Baseball Center. A place for kids to learn the game, yes, but more than that, a place where someone would always be there for them. I stood near the dugout, whistle around my neck, watching a group of kids run drills with more energy than coordination. It didn't matter. They were here. They were trying. And so was I. Emma stood a few feet away, leaning casually against the fence, arms folded but relaxed. She wore a simple white t-shirt and jeans, her hair tied back loosely, strands escaping in the breeze. She hadn't changed much outwardly, but there was something softer in her now. Or maybe I just understood her better. Emma Brooks, 37, still carried that quiet strength, but it was no longer guarded, it was shared. She had stayed. Not because she needed to, not because it was expected, but because she chose to. That difference meant everything. Ryan ran past me, now a year older, taller, more confident. "Coach, did you see that throw?" he shouted, barely slowing down. I did," I called back. "Still needs work." He grinned anyway. That was Ryan Ernest, determined, always trying a little harder than necessary. Somewhere along the way, he stopped seeing me as the guy next door, and I stopped seeing him as someone else's kid. Near the bleachers, Henry sat with my mom, both of them watching the game like they had nowhere else to be, which, in a way, they didn't. Henry had become something more than a neighbor, something closer to family. Ryan had started calling him Grandpa Henry a few months back, half joking at first. It stuck. Henry didn't correct him. I walked over to Emma, handing her a bottle of water. "You staying for the afternoon session?" I asked. She looked at me, a small smile forming. "I always do," she said. No hesitation, no conditions. And just like that, I understood something I had spent years missing. Love isn't something you fight to keep alive on your own. It's something that exists naturally when both people show up. I looked around this field, the kids, my mom, Henry, Emma, Ryan. This wasn't the life I had planned, but it was the life I had chosen. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't trying to hold anything together. I was simply part of something that already worked. So let me ask you, if you were me, would you stay or walk away? Fight for someone who didn't show up, or choose peace instead? Is loyalty something you owe or something people have to earn? And when it really matters, do actions matter more than words? What would you choose? Comment your answer below. Like if this story made you think, subscribe for more powerful real-life stories.